and welcome to The Point. It is Friday, May 20th, 2022. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the GBN Production YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channels 7, 11, and 20, and good morning to the loyal listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9. Joining me virtually this morning for this morning's program is President of the Grenada Union of Teachers, Jude Bartholomew. We have lots to discuss. The GUT has been leading from the forefront when it comes to a lot of matters. So let's say good morning and welcome to President Jude Bartholomew. Morning, Mr. Bartholomew. All is well, I hope?
Yes, good morning, Blossom. It's nice to be with you this morning. And I'd like to say good morning to the GBN family, good morning to the workers of the nation, public officers, good morning to our teachers and our national executive, and to all those who are listening to the various meetings. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
Happy to have you, sir. We have a few things well to cover. Let's see how much we can do within the hour. We're going to start with one of the most current issues, that of the industrial action or the protests that have been held at the T.A. Marshall Community College. I believe that the lecturers have been out every day for the past week and a half or so. So just give us the latest information for the people who may not be aware. Just tell us what the issues are at TAMCC.
Thank you very much. And before I do so, I'll just invoke God's presence quickly. Ask Almighty God to empower and to bless this program this morning with the gift of your Holy Spirit and total charge to take total control.
Amen.
So as we know, the nation know and everybody are aware that there are industrial action taking place at TAMCC with the Grenada Union of Teachers, the lecturers at the college. And also we have seen that Public Workers Union have started joining in the action. And basically, it has been going on for a long period of time. I mean, the grievance and such that the lecturers and workers have at TAMCC, and not only in TAMCC, but right throughout the nation, throughout Grenada, Caribou, and the Petit Matnik. And as a union duty, we have been really patient, exercising some degree of patience with the council, with the management at TAMCC, with the government of Grenada, the lecturers and other workers at TAMCC have been struggling and creating that problems and going through all those things in justice for a long period of time. And basically what we have done is to approach council and to approach management through negotiations for years, trying to see how we can resolve this matter peacefully around the table. But they were very stubborn in the sense and they were not responding. The Grenada Union of Teachers wrote to council and the principal of the college about a month ago, trying to see how we can amicably, discuss this matter and bring some resolution. And they did not really respond appropriately in sense of give timelines at this when they're going to try to solve these problems. We wrote another letter to them expressing our disappointment in their response. And basically we haven't received other responses. And on the basis of that, we decided, well, no, the council and management of TAMCC, the government of Grenada, are not responding. They don't seem as if they want to solve this matter at TAMCC. So there comes a time when you speak for a long time, but sometimes you have to take action because it is said in the proverb that action speaks louder than words. So we see that we decided, the lecturers voted basically to take industrial action. The Grenada Union of Teachers basically supported it by voting, and so we have a mandate. And we see what is happening there. We started small, and the workers are coming out every day, showing the disgust with the protests, with the placards and everything like that. So, and the president of the Grenada Union of Teachers, members of the national executive, together with other members of the college, are basically united in one effort to put some pressure on council, put some pressure on management of the college, and put some pressure, you may say, on the government of Grenada this time to resolve this thing. And that's where we are.
Let me go to this. In the midst of the protest, the Minister of Education, Emmeline Pear, made an allegation that there were lecturers promising better grades to students if they join the picket line, if they join the protests. What say you about this? And I recall her saying she will investigate the matter. And is the GUT investigating the matter as well? Or are you confident either way, if it is or isn't happening?
Is not to say just what I would say or what say I. Basically, the whole executive and the members, the public, and lecturers at the college, everybody I mean, they are really sort of disgusted to hear that thing come out in the public. If there is an allegation as such, I think the Minister of Education has to be responsible in a judgment and everything like that, so, and to really act responsibly in how she tackle this matter. We're not, at this time, is an allegation. There is no empirical evidence to say that such thing happened. And if you hear something, the minister did say that she got a call from away in another country, another jurisdiction, stating that that is the matter. There is no factual thing, empirical evidence to back up that at this time. So even if she wants to discuss the matter and talk about it, I think that it should have been done quietly, because she's the Minister of Education. It's different if an ordinary person, bring out that and make a statement like that at this time. But one have to look at the consequences of such an allegation and coming out public with that. And that could basically tarnish, you're talking about TAMCC, one of the institutions that we have, our top educational institution in Grenada and Caribbean, Pidmatic at this time, and for our young people. And I think if you're talking about the young people, you're talking about education, then you have to act responsibly. No, that would damage the credibility of TAMCC, of the college, for grades. If you're talking about now in the future, you're talking about the young people want to go to St. George's University. You're talking about the young people want to go to study abroad. You're talking also about the young people after they finish TAMCC now in terms of their jobs. And when they bring the grades and everything like that, so they bring the curriculum vitae, they bring the job application to the workplace, one will ask out, there might be some doubt in terms of the children's performance, the grades and everything. Is this correct? And that could create problems for them in entering the world of work. It could create problems for them going and study and all those things. But also you have implications for even the secondary schools and other educational institutions. We're getting ready for CAPE exams, we're getting ready for CXC, CSEC and everything like that. So the question could be further asked, and you could have doubt in the mind, probably even of the University of the West and other persons. Are the teachers and schools doing the right thing in Grenada in terms of the children, SB, the grades and all sort of things? Is it authentic? It is real and such, and that could now create some doubts and problems for Grenada. And so I think it's unfortunate that that happened, and there are other ways to deal with this matter. So there is some problems there, and it's just an allegation. I think the lecturers at TAMCC, they are hot and all those things, they are hot. And teachers in general, because you've seen a pattern basically by the Ministry of Education, and you're seeing attacks on lecturers, you're seeing which another matter we're going to deal with a while in terms of the public statement in a political campaign that the minister basically said on principals and teachers and schools. And so one would want to see here that it seems that there is a public attack on teachers and the teaching fraternity and everything, which is a matter of concern for the nation. So I think the TAMCC issue also, that parents have to be concerned. They are the ones who basically are investing in the children. And so when you want your children to leave an institution, you want to make sure that they're sound and creditable and everything like that. So I don't think the parents should take that well. And all those things that is happening, if it is designed basically to divide parents and to put parents against and the society against teachers and principals, I don't think that it will work. We have a wonderful relationship. Everything may not be perfect, but the teachers are trying, and we have a wonderful relationship between parents, students, and basically teachers and the teaching fraternity. So that is the situation where it is now, and I think it is it is unfortunate. Let me go further to say there is a history in Grenada in terms of young people, students or whatever, taking part in demonstrations, in actions, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the lecturers or any teacher and anybody would encourage or facilitate that. Sometimes the children, the students have a mind on their own. And one would go back to 1983. Look at it when Maurice Bishop was under house arrest. It was the secondary school students, TAMCC, and all those young people. Teachers didn't tell them to go and demonstrate. They left school, they left everything. They weren't even listening to teachers, even when teachers said to them, well, don't go, you might be in danger. 1983, under house arrest, it was the secondary school children in their uniform. They weren't even in college as yet. And they marched and they went up to the residence of Prime Minister Maurice Bishop, and you may say, set him free. set him free. So I would want to think also that if let's say history have a way of sometimes repeating itself, and let's imagine, let's say any prime minister in the region or in Grenada or any minister would have experienced such fate, and let's say they're under some sort of house arrest or some sort of thing, they might smile and feel very well at that time, though, if the nation's students would come to rescue them and to free them. So there is a history of these things in Grenada. And the students at TAMCC, they're basically 18 and above. They're not really on the age of education. Sometimes they're big enough to make the decision. The other thing I would say, they have some interest in that matter because they are the ones who are affected. When you don't have classes and you have disturbances and those things, it affects their education. So probably then they see what is going on and they decide, well, they have a voice and they push to do whatever they have to do to see if they could get some resolution to the matter. So I think it is an unfortunate one, and then it could probably resolve or discuss in another forum, basically privately, because when you bring it to the forefront and you bring it all over the world, then you create problems in terms of the integrity of the college and everything like that.
But even in the midst of that, have you personally heard those reports? Do you intend to actually investigate to see if there is facts behind the allegations?
Well, we heard the report, and for the time being, is they say the minister did say that she's going to investigate it and advise the management of the college to do so. So
but
let's see.
But the GUT would not be.
We will hold in discussion and such. We haven't really, in terms of to be that sort of part in terms of investigating and such. But when we have our next meeting and such, we'll also decide where we go from here with this matter. But for the time being, the minister did say that she's going to investigate. The problem is, so let's see. Basically, we don't know what could be the outcome of this thing. But what about now if that is not correct and it is not true? And the lecturers, basically, their names have been tarnished. So I don't know what will happen there if those things are not true. And basically, publicly, they have been shaped. And so one could see these things heading in all sort of different direction. That's where it is at the time.
And speaking about the education minister, she also spoke or mentioned the issue of what she calls illegal school fees across the island. Just expound on that. What's the basis, do you think, for such a statement?
It is very sad again that basically that is done and said on a political platform. We haven't really discussed that together in meetings with the Ministry of Education and such that sort of problems. Now, if we almost come into the period of an election in Grenada, so that's basically problem have not been dealt with publicly for all these years. We're going on 4 years and going almost at the doorstep of election. So if there was a real problem and the government of Grenada and the Ministry of Education was so concerned, as they say, poor people, children paying high fees and such, one would want to think that they would have dealt with this matter a long time ago. So it seems that all the problems for poor people, children and everything, and for workers, right about now, the government just starting to see, and the Ministry of Education just starting to see and recognize some of the problems and all those things that have been going on for a long period of time. And one can say it is unfortunate and it is a shame, because all problems now are manifesting itself right before election. Where are these people, or where were the people all these years when the nation's children was paying all these illegal fees and parents and everything like that? So one also would go a little further to say there are established fees in terms of even for registration by the Ministry of Education sanction. I want to think and stand to correction as $75 as a basic fee in terms of registration. Now, when the children have to register, what will happen is that they expect it, sometimes they pay, and they might pay a little more based on the situation. And we're going to look at the situation, the economic situation in school, probably why that is happening. I don't have no evidence again to say that is happening or it is not happening. What I'm saying here, there are circumstances and situations that could lead to that, and the nation must examine that and such and see what is happening. You register, you have to get your tie, you have to get your games uniform, you have to get sometimes a Bible, you have to get a number of different things. Basically, sometimes even in schools, they will come to some of the subventions that the Ministry of Education and government pay to primary and secondary schools. So $75 or $110 or what the case may be for registration or whatever that fee is. I'm not saying it is right or wrong, but what are the circumstances and the situations that are causing probably different schools to charge differently just to make up? Because that money can't cut it. It can't really cut it for the schools. And for a long period of time, you know what is unfortunate here? The teachers and the principals are so dedicated and hardworking and committed to the nation's children that they are making the invaluable sacrifices and going the extra miles, not only just with the legal subvention that the Ministry of Education give to schools, but the history and the record is there that principals and teachers are raising funds, taking part in probably you have a fair in the school, you come and you have probably a bingo, having dance, begging institutions and organizations, past students and all those things, and private enterprises just to really make ends meet with the school. And one would say it is a shame and embarrassing and humiliating to principals and teachers. After they make all these sacrifices and such, the pressure is upon them to run school effectively. You know, the Ministry of Education and the government of Grenada, all they know that they lego everything and all the responsibility in the hands of schools, whether primary and secondary schools. And then now they come, they give you for the primary school, they give you a subvention of $800. Now, $800 sometimes in this economic time, you know the cost of living in Grenada right now and what is happening with COVID-19 and how you have to drive up the costs. Even for an ordinary family of 4 or 5 persons in a family, $800 can really cut and can really run a family for the month. And you'll see what is happening there. More or less to give a primary school. We're making joke, we're talking about education, and we must put our money where our mouth is. And sometimes the nation is not aware. So sometimes of all these things, good come out of evil so that they expose what is really going on. The teachers and principals in schools are working miracle in terms of just as in Egypt, basically taking straw and turning to bricks. And that is what is happening there with education. The primary school gets $800 every month. Remember the size of a primary school. You're dealing with hundreds of children. $800 can cut for an ordinary family. How is it that a school could run effectively with all the different responsibilities, especially in COVID-19? They have to buy the sanitizers, the cleaning agents, because when the ministry talk about COVID and they say they give school sanitizing things, they give you sometimes 1 little gallon of vinegar and those things. And when that finish, the schools and the principals and teachers have to dip to really and truly to protect the nation's children. They have to spend and beg and do all those things. And what is more humiliating and insulting, principals and teachers in school have to beg entities and enterprises things that they don't do for their family. They go and beg here, there, and everywhere. Can you give me that for the school? Can you give me that for the children? Can you give me that for this? The Ministry of Education and those high people there, they are not the ones who are doing it. You know? It is the principals and teachers that are going out of their way and doing everything to beg, to do all sorts of things to make sure that schools run effectively and efficiently. What the Ministry of Education is concerned about is basically good results, exam results and everything, and they level everything else. What about the labs in school, the computers, the different things? Who really pay for it? Even if they give you the computers and they give you the stuff, running the chemistry lab, running the whatever other labs, it is the schools that sometimes have to get the additional resources to do that. And primary school have the same basically problem as the secondary school. So sometimes the nation is not even aware of the tremendous sacrifices that principals and teachers have to make in running school, even sometimes going behind the scene to help out a child. Teachers and principals dip deep in their pockets, sometimes buying a shoe, buying a uniform. Children have to go to the hospital. Who pay the gas? Additional resources from the school, from the principals and from everybody. And it is very insulting. It is very humiliating to see that we go into all these things. Let's go a little further with the secondary schools. So look at it. Annually for 1 year, the primary school, 800 by 12, $9,060 and $600 basically for a primary school. They can't really do anything with that. It wouldn't cut. And you look at the secondary school now. The secondary school, the smaller schools get about $4,000. One is not too sure if they get the entire $4,000 per month. The bigger schools get basically around $6,000, around approximately. One is not certain that they get it. If you look at it and you go a little further and you multiply that, you would want to see what they usually get the secondary school basically for a year. So it doesn't even cut about $72,000 basically when you watch it. So it is not an easy task basically for the primary school and the secondary schools. And the secondary school, the primary school get a little more things. They might get some food for the school feeding programs and different things. But basically the secondary school, all what the government give them at the Ministry of Education for subvention is basically $4,000 and $6,000. And they have to buy everything for themselves. So if they have a school feeding program, they provide the stuff. What about the labs and all those things? All these the $4,000 and the $6,000 have to do all those things. The toiletries, the office, running of the offices and buying office supplies. Not all secondary schools basically have a secretary. Not all schools basically have a watchman. Sometimes the school to protect the very set children that they watch. This thing is not easy. What I should probably write about now, teachers and other people are crying and they're in tears because the school is trying to secure basically the students. The students is most important there. So when you think about sometimes the escalation and violence and different things in school, sometimes the schools have to beg and dig to make sure that you have a security. The security in school that sometimes the Ministry of Education and the government not paying for. It is schools that sometimes raising their own resources and such to pay for that, to secure the children. The labs and the different things. When parents, you can imagine that you're sending a child to school. There is no ink, there is no photocopying machine. The Ministry of Education decided that they're going to go paperless. Paperless, so they're not sending any information in school to written letters and things. They're going paperless. So what they do, all they care is send an email to the principal or to the schools, and then now they expect you to print everything. Exams and all those things like that. So they don't come here and give schools paper, and all the paper, printing paper and photocopying paper. It's schools that have to buy this bulk of things for the exams and all those things. Calculate the price of a toner for these big machines and a cartridge and all those things. Who pays for that in the background? It is principals and teachers that are hot in the head. And sometimes nobody knows. So if they do not do that, how will the school run? You think the Ministry of Education basically meeting that budget for schools? The real economy for schools is the teachers and principals and what they do. Who supports sports and everything like that for the primary school? It is the same teachers who the Minister of Education is insulting. We are the ones who run primary school sports and train the children and everything like that. So all these resources come from the Grenada Union of Teachers and the stipend that and basically the contribution, monthly contribution of teachers for sports. Only when the government come big and everybody clap and make noise and such is when the children go in Olympics and they go in win and all those things like that. The regional games for students who really have to beg and raise funds, who have to have the barbecue by the side of the road and all those things for when them children go in the regional games and all those things, primary school games. Who does that? The Grenada Union of Teachers and its members have to raise barbecue by the road and smoke, doing all sort of things. Where is the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Sports and all those things and how to really and truly do what they have to do? So they must put their money where their mouth is. And I think that is what is really painful and hurtful here this morning, to see the Ministry of Education, government at its highest level, going down and really and truly coming down, and the nation teachers and principals who are basically making this tremendous sacrifice. Exams now, the children are crying out, they are stressed out. Who will run in the midnight hour to make sure that the children prepare? Who doing the sacrifices? The Ministry of Education knows all the sacrifices and all those things that teachers are doing, helping our children. Sometimes students come in the morning, they don't get the breakfast at home. You can't blame the parents. Sometimes it's an unfortunate situation. The principal and the teachers that have to run and buy things to make a breakfast, a hot breakfast for the students. The Ministry of Education have a breakfast program and all those things that they talk about. So if you calculate the economy of schools, this $9,000 and this basically, you may say, say $54,000 or $72,000 a year for secondary schools. Cannot cut it at all. Some schools, they budget in the secondaries 100 and something thousand, almost 300 and something thousand. Where this money is coming from? It's schools and teachers and principals that are really and truly going beyond the call of duty. And I think what is done here is unfortunate and is a great injustice against the lecturers, against the nation teachers, and parents should not fall for these things. Because whether or not, yes, go ahead.
So I want to ask, do you think that part of the solution could be to increase the monies provided to our primary and secondary schools? And is it possible?
Absolutely. If the government and the minister could come out and say there are illegal fees and fees transfer, graduation and such and those things, it means, that all the teachers could do. You see, there is a saying that is crab kindness that causes it don't have head. And basically what is happening there, all the teachers could send principals. Remember, we have work to rule and we don't really have to do all these things. So right about now, the Minister of Education and the government of Grenada have created another problem, because without teachers and principals, they cannot run school effectively. What about if the principals and teachers to say, you see what the Ministry of Education said there and the minister, we're not going to raise any funds for schools, we're not going to do it. And we're going to sit down and watch to see, let the Ministry of Education and let the government of Grenada come up with all the resources to run the labs, to do everything for the children. And I could guarantee you here, bet my bottom dollar, that education will come to a halt in Grenada. And it's the nation's children that will suffer. And that is what drives the teachers and motivate principals and teachers to go the extra mile, to raising funds and begging things that they don't do for the family, for the nation's children. So if we really want, and we really, because of what is done, but I want to say here and put on record that the teachers would not fall into that. The teachers and principals in school will rise above that and do what they have to do for the parents, the society, the nation's sake, and for the nation's children. And that's what I would want to say. And going a little further for graduation, sometimes it's the same students and parents that want this exorbitant graduation. Parents don't want no stupidness for their children when they have to graduate. So sometimes even what is said there now, this little money the Minister of Education talking about there, with the high cost of living, you think $300 for graduation could already cut it? You have to give awards. You have to sometimes have a sound system. You have to provide snacks and meals and all those things. And all those things are catered for. If it is illegal, let me hasten to say, there's a lot of hypocrisy there. When you have graduations in school, they invite the Minister of Education, they invite the DOs, they invite the Chief Education Officer, they invite other people. The same illegal funds after the graduation, you see them with a nice snack box. The nice snack box. You see them sometimes sit down eating their dinner. You see them eating and enjoying, probably drinking a little champagne and drinking something from the same illegal money that they claim that is charged for graduation. So if it was basically illegal and such, they engaging in it because they eating and drinking in it after graduation and having a good time. So one would want to say, well, let the Ministry of Education, the government of Grenada, come up with the costs and everything and to provide the funding for graduation. Let them take that responsibility. Let them provide basically all the funding for schools. And there is hypocrisy in that. You know what hurt me? If education in Grenada was so free, why is it that the children have to pay money for registration when they're doing the exams? Why is it that they have to pay for CXC? Why is it that they have to pay for CAPE and other exams? Then if it is really free, then it means that the government of Grenada are doing the same thing. The government should come up and pay for CXC or CSEC for the nation's children for secondary school. They should pay for CAPE and everything like that. So for children as students at TAMCC, and they should be covering all those things because education is free.
Well, Mr. Bartholomew, what's the communication like between the GUT management and the Ministry of Education? Because if the minister has these concerns with the legal fees and what she calls, encouraging the students to join the picket line, and the GUT also has the concerns with the lack of fees at the institutions, do y'all communicate? Do y'all speak? Do y'all meet regularly to talk about these issues besides, protests, and then we meet to hash out the agreements? And so do y'all meet otherwise?
Yes, we meet. We have a monthly meeting and other engagement with the Ministry of Education and sometimes the Minister for Education. But meeting, basically, what I've been doing, we have been meeting for years. We have been meeting for regularization and all the different things, and you just meet. And most of the times you have a discussion, engagement, and basically nothing basically has been done to address sometimes these matters. It is correct to say that the minister have been trying in some ways to address some matters and some things, but other things, sometimes you don't really get these things and then rectify. Unfortunately, that's what I'm saying. Right about now, you've been hearing about them in the public domain and you're hearing them in rallies and those things like that. But we've been meeting, and sometimes you ask yourself, is it really the meeting with the Ministry of Education and such, does it really worth it? Because you're going in meeting for meeting's sake, and a lot of the time, some of the things that you're trying to correct or you're trying to implement and such, basically it just frustrates everybody because you don't really get them done. And these are some of the problems. But in spite of that, the problem at TAMCC, in terms of what the minister would have said, and in terms of that relationship, what she would have expressed in the political rally and everything like that. So I would not come here to say that the Minister of Education is a bad person or she has not been trying in many instances. It is unfortunate what she said publicly with TAMCC and add insult to injury with her statement against principals and teachers. And I would still want to say to the nation, teachers and lecturers, I know that you are hurting and it's not easy, but I would want to still say to us probably to, still go a little further to, forgive, the Minister for Education in terms of utterances publicly in what she said. I know it is not easy and such, but let's try to see how we could, forgive her, and let's try to see how we could go past that, and let's put the Ministry of Education and the Minister put their money where their mouth is in terms of trying to solve now. All right. So I will say yes, we try to forgive her. We are hot and such, and people may never forget that at the time. But let's the Minister of Education, the government of Grenada and TAMCC prove themselves now, basically to go forward to solve that situation with the increase in salary at TAMCC for workers for the last 10 years, they did not get paid. To solve that situation with increments and other problems for lecturers and other persons. So yes, that have been said, but at the same time, let's see what the minister will do. In other words, now to try to make up in the sense and try to address this industrial matter that causing more problems and everything that caused that in the first place, with workers and even students having to come outside to protest and to rectify and to some social and economic justice for the lecturers and PW workers at TAMCC, so that they could get what they deserve. For these 10 years, they have been denied of salary increases and the increments. So let's see what the minister will do and work hard in trying to remedy that, and also to try to see what she can do, I could say probably to make up or to address that situation with the unfortunate situation in the public domain with illegal school fees and those things. So for the time being, that is it for them. I'll just allow me to say one more thing. What is even painful, and we're watching as Jude, even in the time, even at that particular time, with sports intercom, the same our teachers and gaps from the secondary school, even if we had a work to rule, they went a little further one day and break it. And the Ministry of Education and everybody will call it upon them to have sports to have intercall. And for the children's sake, they had intercalling. And just after intercall now, when some of our members would have engaged in these sports, just to probably, lift up, the nation's children, the Ministry of Education, the government of Grenada, as the intercall finished now, the Minister of Education and the ministry turn right back now and start insulting and humiliating the very secondary schools and all those things who take part in these sports. And that is a lesson for us to stick to our union and what the case may be, and is to open our eyes, basically, no matter what teachers, principals, and everybody do and try, basically you're getting the bitter end of the stick. So we leave it right there for the time being and move on.
All right, let's take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk some more with the GUT President, Jude Bartholomew. This is To The Point on Classic and GBN. We'll be right back.
The most anticipated family fun-filled event on the GBN calendar is back. The Maggie King of the Grill. Join us on June 4th at Montrouge. Be part of the culinary masterpiece as the best grillers on island compete for the coveted title of the Maggie King of the Grill. Think you have what it takes? Be part of the action. June 4th. Book your spot. If not, step away from the grill if you can't handle the heat. Maggie King of the Grill is sponsored by Maggie, Matook's Barbecue Sauce, Rubis, Dasani Water, Calico Shopping Center, Duty Free Caribbean, and Siesta Hotel. The most anticipated family fun-filled event on the GBN calendar is back. The Maggie King of the Grill. Join us on June 4th at Montrouge. Be part of the culinary masterpiece as the best grillers on island compete for the coveted title of the Maggie King of the Grill. Think you have what it takes? Be part of the action. June 4th. Book your spot. If not, step away from the grill if you can't handle the heat. Maggie King of the Grill is sponsored by Maggie, Matook's Barbecue Sauce, Rubis, Dasani Water, Calico Shopping Center, Duty Free Caribbean, and Siesta Hotel.
5 things you need to know about self-isolation. Stay home. If you are told to self-isolate, it means staying at home, not going to work, school, or other public places, and you should not have any visitors. Separate yourself. If you live with others, then you need to stay in a well-ventilated bedroom with the door shut. If you have to share a bathroom, then use it after everyone else. Don't share towels and toiletries, as this may put others at risk. Call ahead. If you develop symptoms such as a fever or cough, then seek advice first by calling the Ministry of Health's hotline at 538-4787 or 458-4787. Please do not show up at a medical center or hospital, as this may put others at risk. Take care with waste. If you test positive, your waste should be double bagged and disposed of separately. Create a buddy system. If you live on your own, you can plan with friends and family to check in with each other and run essential errands if one becomes sick. Once sick, they should leave groceries on the doorstep. Why it's important. COVID-19 causes a mild illness for 4 out of 5 persons. Self-isolating will help protect the older generation and those who may have underlying health problems from getting infected.
Welcome back to The Point. We are speaking this morning with the President of the Grenada Union of Teachers, Jude Bartholomew. We're looking at some of the issues that are affecting our teachers, the nation's teachers. I know there may be people with questions and comments for Mr. Bartholomew, but we still have things to cover, such as the pension judgment and the payments for the judgment. The Prime Minister's noted in a national address that he would set up a committee to look into how the payments can be made. How optimistic are you that this can be settled to your satisfaction in short order?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I think we want to say thank God that the judge basically has ruled in our favor. What it shows that basically, in spite of the situation in Grenada, there is still some kind of law and order, and justice will be done. If we don't get it from the politicians, we get it from the court. And I think that persons must really lift up the judge and with God for appreciation for that. What the battle lies now in terms of the payment for that pension payment, and you're hearing all sorts of different things. we have to safeguard ourselves as workers. It's not basically, I'm not the one as the president of duty just making that decision. And it shouldn't be basically the presidents of PW or just TAU making that decision in terms of how we go forward. We should be listening to our members. The members, the teachers of the Grenada Union of Teachers that have really basically the power in their hands, that they are the ones who guide what we do. And we have to listen to our members sometimes, and although we go forward. I think basically what is the little bit of skepticism there and mistrust, what would have happened in 2018 with the memorandum of understanding and basically the pronouncement of the Prime Minister that basically pension is back and everything, and we see the struggles that took place for the pension and everything after that. And so you can't blame the workers, the teachers, and those persons in Grenada who battle and have to go to the court for pension restoration. And here it comes now. The precedence has been set. The pension is a constitutional matter. The government of Grenada have been paying pension to workers before, even before 1983, and those who qualified thereafter. So they know what to do in terms of paying pension. They know the payments that people have to get, the gratuity. That is the pension that have been restored in 1958 pension, gratuity and pension and everything. So it is kind of unreasonable and unfortunate that the government of Grenada pretends they don't know what to do. They don't know who have to get pension. They're not aware of the lease and all those different things. They well know, all right? And what we want is confidence in the system. We were negotiating with government. It did not come out well. We had to go to the court, teachers, public officers march up and down. And when the judgment has been pronounced now, here we have to go back in a deep set of negotiations to get what is rightfully ours. When the politicians and everybody else have to get their stuff, they don't have all these negotiations and all this rigmarole. Yes, we hear about a committee, but I don't think we have any confidence in the committee. We expressed that in May. What is the reason and purpose for all these committees and all those things? We also met, there was a meeting with the IMF. We put out a press statement. We asked the question also, why is it that the IMF basically had to come to discuss about pension for public officers and teachers? All other negotiations and discussions with whatever before the government make decisions, we didn't hear about the IMF coming to workers and commenting for that. So that is our concern there. In the discussions with the IMF, well, our lawyers were there led by Mr. Bristol, so he handled it nicely, and he did handle it nicely. What our concern basically have revealed is that the IMF have certain documents and such and data for pension that the government gave to them that they did not give to the unions and to our lawyers, and we did question that. If the government really of Grenada really serious about discussions and everything, they should have forwarded us and present the information. And they say they did not have the data, but they have the information. They know who have to get pensions. The government have a calculations into how much. So we did ask, and I think all lawyers will deal with that in terms of approaching the government and so to finding out and to give us the data, what they have and what they presented to the IMF. That meeting basically with the IMF, I myself did not attend that meeting, but there are other persons who basically got the instructions and such to attend that meeting on behalf. There was a second meeting where we sat down and discussed probably the way forward, the different means and ways of engagement, and very soon all lawyers will write it out to the government of Grenada and to the Attorney General in terms of giving us that information. We have to be very careful as workers, as trade unions, as teachers, public officers, how we tread this thing, especially before an election in Grenada. We have to tread cautiously. Yes, I'm not saying we're against any negotiations or any meeting with the government, but we don't really have to negotiate. But we have to be careful because we get burned already. And teachers and other public officers are watching carefully based on what have transpired before, that we don't want to get burned twice. And that's what we're saying. If the government is serious about pension, what they should do is to prove it to the nation and to the workers. Let them start paying. Pay something before the election. Let people see the confidence that they mean business. Those persons who are retiring this year in January or those things, some persons who are waiting around, pay them, and that will show us that you're serious. Even if you can pay them more, but start paying something. Actions speak louder than words. So yes, I'm not really in terms of against engagement, but we have to be careful on how we tread with those things so that at the end of it, and when election is for near and gone, that we don't find ourselves in an unfortunate situation and workers will be bitter, they wouldn't like that. So if the government really want to solve the problem and they really want to pay, all well and good, approach the unions, put your plan, say how you're paying, when you're paying, and all those things like that. So, and let's see how we're going from that. But our lawyers will be in charge in terms of engaging. But I think it is very important for our unions to get a way forward. Even if we have our lawyers and we have our executive, we have everybody, we also have to listen to the voice of our members, because they are the ones who have been marching up and down and doing all those things and setting the way for pension. So we must listen to them going forward.
And you mentioned the payment, and which reminded me of a news release I saw earlier this week. I believe it came from either the GUT or GTAU in relation to the IMF being included in this discussion, in the pension discussion. What's the major concern of the unions that the IMF appears to be so greatly involved in this process?
Well, it brings a level of suspicion in itself. I don't know who basically facilitated that, but it brings a level because there are other discussions when Grenada was under austerity measures and all those things. That we know that the IMF were there and such, but they engage with governments, and most of the engagement is with government. And one would want to say that if the government probably could have just engaged with the IMF, if they want to decide, well, how do they make the payment and everything, the IMF not necessarily have to come to us, have the engagement with basically the government, because the government that have to make the payments. But nevertheless, we don't know for what reason they came to us, but I think that the lawyers basically dealt with them effectively, and they get the message. They get the message that teachers and public officers, that we are not making joke for this pension, which the workers fight too hard for. And so that is the battle continuously. We are very confident that we won it in the courts, and we're not going to lose it now. So yes, all well and good. If the government, we hear in pronouncement from the NDC, we hear in pronouncement from the government of Grenada, we're not taking any sides in that. We're not interested in any political thing or anything like that. So with the Grenada Union of Teachers, and for me as a president of Grenada, basically we basically not anti-government or anything. What we are and what I am, pro-workers. And that's why I want to do. I want to make sure that the benefits and such that we have and what we achieve is guarded, and that the teachers, public officers, everybody get their true economic justice. So I think the engagement with the IMF will not to show what is the reason for it, but what will make sure a strong message was sent from our lawyers, and that is the important thing there.
Has the IMF ever been involved in such a conversation at this level before?
Well, basically, when Grenada wanted to take austerity measures and such, I think we had discussion. I think they had it with the TUC, the IMF. All right. So what you observe, though, it is rather strange. When things are going nice in Grenada and the government is doing well and everything like that, so you don't hear about the IMF coming to the workers of this country and saying, how can we help you to increase your salaries and payments and working conditions and do better? Every time Grenada is in a particular situation, whether for austerity measure and in some trouble, that's when the IMF come to workers. So we are the one that will bail out the country and do everything. But when it comes to our benefit for pension now, they come in for discussion, and we're very concerned about that. They must come all the time, whether in good times and encouraging, when things are flourishing, encourage the government to pay the workers and to treat the workers nicely. When things are sort of bad and we have to go in austerity measures and such, and they come, the workers are always committed to do that, and they will do so. But at this time, it is very suspicious. So it doesn't matter who comes, whether IMF come, whether who comes or whatever. What the Grenada Union of Teachers, we have our eye on the ball. We are very focused together with the other unions, and to put it on the record, we're not making joke for this pension that workers have to get. We are very focused and we are watching, and we're just treading cautiously.
But can you give us an idea of what the IMF, what their end of the discussion was like? What were they offering? Were they inquiring? Were they just in the meeting?
Well, as I said, that meeting exactly with the IMF, I did not attend that meeting for various reasons.
When you didn't get
from our union, but afterwards we had a briefing. The lawyers did call a meeting and such, and I attended the briefing. Well, the IMF basically state what they're here for, who basically sent them and everything, and so what they were trying to achieve. They wanted to hear from the unions and such, but the union basically representative did not really speak at that meeting. The lawyers spoke, and Mr. Bristol, and they make it loud and clear that what we want basically is the government coming to say how they paying, when they paying, and that's what we are interested in, and to let the IMF know that the data that you have about pension, whether the amount of persons to get, and all those things, and probably the costs that the government, we think that the government should not only give the IMF, but if they genuine, they should present that data, which they claim that they don't have, but they could give it to the IMF, that they should present it to the unions and also to our legal representatives. So make it loud and clear.
Do you think that was a form of intimidation?
Well, I do not have that evidence to say. I don't want to go that far to say it's a form of intimidation, because here we just come and we talk about the minister and we say she was a little bit irresponsible in making that sort of pronouncement for TAMCC and for the principals and so it will be probably a little irresponsible of me to say that basically that is a form of intimidation. I think that is a kind of harsh word, and I don't want to get into that. What I want to be concerned about is the sense that our pension and everything have been paid, and all the other things that are owed to workers. That is my concern, greatest. That's what we're concerned about. That justice, social and economic justice is this to not only teachers, public officers, to the nurses, to the doctors, the police officers, prison officers, and everybody else. Give us this day our daily bread. That's what we're asking for.
All right, let me see if I can get one or two questions from... Let me see if I can take this caller quickly. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Miss Blossom.
Good morning, Mr. Bido. Go right ahead.
Well, how we're doing is that I'm getting nothing here at all. Nothing at all. So I know how the program going.
You mean on Classic?
Yeah, on Classic Radio.
Okay, I'll let the technicians know.
Well, yes.
Okay.
We ain't nothing at all. So I'll talk to you on Monday. But anyway, I like your outfit this morning with the white shirt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bido. Have a good weekend.
Well, yeah, you too.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bido. Somebody on WhatsApp, Mr. Bartholomew, is asking, Jude, the NDC leader is campaigning saying that he will pay pension if elected. How hopeful are you that the NDC is speaking your language, and did the unions meet with the leader on how the pension would be paid?
Again, that's a sort of political question that stands. And I don't really want to take part here in this sort of dimension and, going politically how the NDC or whoever will pay. What we're watching as workers are we to watch. We heard pronouncement from the NDC. We heard pronouncement from the NNP, the government of Grenada. Right? At this time, the government of Grenada, they are the ones who are in power. And they are the ones who basically at this time have to pay the pension, and that's what we're concerned about. Any pronouncement from the NDC, it will be left to be proven whether or not if they win the election, then that responsibility will be in their hands. In terms of meetings and such with NDC or any political party, I, as the president of the Grenada Union of Teachers, will not engage at this time with any discussion with any political party, whether NDC, whether NNP, whether GOLP or anybody. I will not engage in this sort of discussion at that particular time, especially in this time of our election in Grenada. What we want to be is to be neutral in the sense. Or yes, we might hear what they say on each side and everything. It's for the workers basically right now to really wait out and everything like that, to wait out. That's what workers have to do, pay attention, whether teachers, public officers, and everybody. All we want, whether NNP or NDC or whoever wins this election, that is their responsibility to honor the judgment of the court and to pay the pension. But I don't really want to get into any discussion, political stance, because basically I'm not for and I'm not against. All we are right about now is pro-work.
And you mentioned election, and as we all know by now, the election date, June 23rd, clashes with some of the exams for CSEC, and which has been a concern for a number of people. How concerned is the GUT with this, and are you involved in any discussions in terms of what adjustments can be made?
We heard about that too. I think it's a concern, but we haven't really entered discussions whether with the Ministry of Education and even as a national executive, but we've been hearing that from the public and the concern and everything. So I think that's something we are taking a note of, and I think probably the government of Grenada, they are the ones responsible for elections, and they should have taken that into considerations, because basically the schools are used for polling divisions and polling stations. So that's something we're watching, and let's see if adjustments can be made on that. But we realize for time we want to talk about regularization and upgrades, because it's one of the most important things here. So can I go forward with that?
Very quickly, we can touch on the regularization.
Yes, the regularization, it is very, very important. It is unfortunate that after all these many years we have been negotiating, and the government, the Prime Minister made a pronouncement in terms of when property regularization will take place. We were told that basically by March. Up to now, March gone, April gone, May gone. We haven't heard anything about regularization, and the temporary teachers are there permanently temporary for all these times. Not only teachers, but other public officers, nurses and doctors and persons in the public service. It is unfair and unfortunate. We just about approaching elections. So when would this thing be done? Teachers are hurting. They are doing the work too. They are on the front line, just as other public officers. So we're calling on the government of Grenada, the Ministry of Education, to address this matter expeditiously, because it is very, very serious for us. And teachers are hurting, they are crying. Public officers are hurting, they are crying. And so also dealing with the upgrades. What about persons who the Ministry of Education asks to develop themselves? Their bachelors, their masters, teachers from TAMCC who have successfully completed Teachers College 2020. The Ministry of Education said that these persons will be upgraded by February. February gone, March gone, April gone. Then May, no letters of upgrading and everything like that. So no financial compensation have been given to these teachers. What is really going on? And the teachers are crying out and they are watching. So we're asking the Ministry of Education, the government of Grenada, to move expeditiously to try to settle these matters and other matters of concern for our unions and public officers. Also to do that expeditiously. Because what will happen there, we're seeing that if they don't do that, you'll start to see what is happening in Tauha, the industrial action, they settle the matter. You see what is going on in TAMCC. You see what is going on. I think even the Grenada Union of Teachers, the teachers will asking for some form of action and to do that quickly, because they're hurting and such. And yes, we try to negotiate, but it seems as the only language that the Ministry of Education and the government of Grenada really hear and understand and fully interpret is when we march on the street and we take action. So we are very concerned about regularization, upgrades for our members, and we're asking the government of Grenada, the Ministry of Education, to settle this matter soon.
How many temporary teachers? Do you have an idea of how many still need to be regularized?
We have about 400 and something temporary teachers. And the last list that we got from the Ministry of Education is that 106 teachers will be upgraded. We don't know when. So you have a lot of teachers, approximately 400 teachers still there temporarily and hanging, and we still do hope that although it is late, that is not too late, that the government of Grenada, the Ministry of Education, will basically make permanent more than the 106 teachers. And now basically the teachers have suffered, other public officers and nurses and doctors and all those persons who are temporary for a long time, just do the honorary thing and upgrade everybody. Now is upgrading time. Regularize and upgrade our members, and to do so.
Mr. Bartholomew, would like to thank you very much for being our guest this morning. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I know there were other things that we needed to speak about, but hopefully we can schedule another appearance for you and get to some of those other matters.
Thank you so much.
30 seconds, closing remarks.
Thank you so very much. And so that is our concerns to the nation. And we urge the Ministry of Education, the government of Grenada, to move expeditiously to solve this problem. And basically also for negotiations, we ask the government for us to come to the negotiating table for the next 3-year cycle. We wish everybody, every Grenadian, the best in the elections that are coming soon. We ask persons to do what we have to do. Not my responsibility to tell people who to vote for and such, but we have to be wise and to secure our interests. And we call upon the nation to pray and fast and to do everything for the pension and for the elections in Grenada. God is good all the time. God bless our nation and our public workers and our teachers. And thank you so very much for inviting me to the program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bartholomew, for accepting the invitation, and we'll definitely keep in touch and continue to follow these major developments concerning our teachers. Thank you. And that was the president of the Grenada Union of Teachers, Jude Bartholomew, our guest this morning. I'd like to thank him very much. There were still issues we need to get to, but hopefully we can get to them in short order when he returns soon. So thank him very much, and thank you, viewers and listeners, for tuning into To The Point. Always a pleasure to be with you. It's time for me to head on out and make way for the GT, who's up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. Have yourselves an enjoyable Friday. Have yourselves a safe weekend, and continue to protect yourselves from COVID-19 and all other viruses and diseases that may just be on the outside. I am out for the day. Bye, everybody. See you Monday, please the Lord. Oh, wait, hold on. Before I leave, for those of you who, well, then you won't be able to hear the message, but in case you know someone in the northern part of the island, we are having a power outage at our location in Kublal, which is where our antennas or our signals come from. So we are trying to see how best we can and how soon we can rectify that issue and return power to Kublal, as well as our classic feed and whatever else may be affected by the power outage. But our technicians are on it and they're working on it. So if you know anybody, including on the sister isle, feel free to call them on the phone and give them that update for me, please. They won't be able to hear the message, so just pass it on our behalf. Appreciate it. All right, that's it for me today. Bye, everybody.